Everyone had a good weekend. Clerk Meadows, go ahead and call roll call, please.
Good morning. Commissioner Orth,
Here.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Here.
Commissioner Ward,
Here.
Commissioner Frohnberger,
Here.
Commissioner McGordy,
Here.
Commissioner Mulhern,
Here.
Commissioner Winkle, Commissioner Gonzalez, and Commissioner Haschak. Commissioner Rodenson's apologies for her absence today. Other staff present include Executive Officer Hinman, Analyst Larkin Filer, Clerk Kristen Meadows, and our legal counsel, Marcia Birch, I believe. Thank you.
Okay, so Commissioner Gonzalez, you are a city rep today. Our first matter is AB 361, the remote teleconference action. I'm looking for a motion to affirm resolution 2021-2214 to allow for the next 30-day period of Zoom meetings.
So moved, Chair.
Thank you.
Second, Frohnberger.
Just a comment for staff before we go to a vote, please. In the special notice up above, it reads in the grayed out box, it says meeting for March 7th. Is that supposed to be the current meeting, or am I misunderstanding that?
You are correct. Thank you for that correction. It should be for today.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Is there any update on future meetings at the board level, at the board?
Uma, do you have that?
Yes. Our understanding is they will not be considering other agency use of the chambers until at least summer.
There's been a slight outbreak here in Willits due to an event, so it's still around.
We're recovering on the South Coast too from a similar incident.
Uh-huh.
No, I'm wondering after the Hopland Firehouse barbecue, if we're not going to see something out of that too, because that was a gathering of about 400 people.
Wow. Yeah, there was been about 30 cases out of a local 20-year anniversary for a local bar. So here in Willits. Unfortunate. With that, why don't we call the motion, please? Clerk Meadows?
The vote?
Yes, the vote.
Commissioner Frohnberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Gonzalez,
Let's see.
He's muted.
I
Yeah.
believe, Commissioner Gonzalez, I believe to unmute from your phone, it is *6.
There he is.
All right. Yes.
thank you.
We got you.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Commissioner McGordy,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulhern,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
yes, yeah, and then Chair Orth.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, Executive Officer Hinman, would you please describe how members of the public can come forward into our meeting for public expression?
Yes, thank you. To provide comments, please use the raise hand function in Zoom. For those accessing from a computer, tablet, or smartphone, the raise hand function may be selected by clicking or tapping it from the reactions options. When joining the Zoom meeting, please speak your name when you are identified by phone number. For those utilizing the telephone option, which is audio only, please use the raise hand feature by pressing *9 on your keypad to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. When it's your turn to speak, you'll be called on by the last 4 digits of your phone number and asked to identify yourself for the record.
Thank you. And of course, public expression is for items not on today's agenda. Would you please indicate if you need to speak by raising your hand or unmuting, please? I'll be waiting 20 seconds to see if anyone comes forward.
Chair, can I ask a question during the wait? Are you on item 5? Did we miss item 4, sir?
No, we're on item 3, public expression.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
That's okay. I'm not seeing any hands being raised. I do not see anyone unmuting themselves. Okay, given that, then we'll move the agenda to item 4, the consent calendar. Do any commissioners wish to discuss or pull any item of our consent calendar today?
I just like to make a comment.
Please do.
The reconciliation that you put together, Uma, was very good. I like that for the checking and as well as the reserve account with West American Bank. I don't believe the other commissioners get a copy of it, but it's basically a bank reconciliation she's doing each month now, and it's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. And with no just further discussion, I will say that part of this motion is to accept and file the 2021 audit. And as usual, LAFCO got a clean audit. So great work, staff. And let's move on with a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Mohan moves approval of the consent calendar.
McGordy seconds.
Any further discussion or any member of the public wishing to speak on our consent calendar today? I'll wait a period of seconds for anyone to raise their hand. Okay, seeing none, Clerk Meadows, go ahead and do the roll call.
Yes, Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Frohnberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulhern,
Yes.
Commissioner McGordy,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Star 6. Here he comes.
Great. Yes.
Thank you. Chair Orth,
Yes.
thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Clerk Meadows. With that, we have a public hearing today on our proposed budget and work plan for fiscal year 22-23, and I'll turn it over to E.O. Hinman.
Thank you, Chair Orth. I'm going to do a presentation, so I will share that. Okay. Here we go. So this is the first public hearing on our proposed budget for fiscal year 2022-23. The policy, our local policy 5.1 lays out the process for the budget. We're required to submit a preliminary budget and work program to the executive committee in March of each year, with the public hearing presented with a presentation to the commission in April and a final budget adoption by June 15th of each fiscal year. We did hold a workshop on the preliminary budget and work program on March 7th, and today is the first public hearing for the proposed budget and work program. The results of today will be distributed to the agencies, and then a public hearing on the final budget will be scheduled in June. This item was publicly noticed, and those proof of notices are in your agenda packet. The budget consists of revenue and expenditures, and the revenue is primarily based on the apportionment fees, which are established by the commission with the adoption of the annual budget. The county auditor is responsible for establishing or for developing the list of apportionments based on a formula that is laid out in state code. And it is a 1/3 equal split between the county, the cities, and the special districts, and is based on the overall revenue of the districts, of the agencies. Other revenue is the interest from our bank accounts. We have a checking account with Savings Bank of Mendocino County, a reserve account at West America, and then we have our apportionments are held in the county treasury.
We also have unreserved equity that is essentially rollover from fiscal year to fiscal year. And then we have new for this next fiscal year will be service fees. Our budget also includes our reserves and contingencies. For legal reserves, the commission directed 50,000 minimum, and for our operating reserves, our policy states that 25% of the operating budget. New for this next fiscal year, we've proposed a work plan contingency, which consists of unreserved equity, which is essentially the rollover of the work plan budget from fiscal year to fiscal year. This will allow for some flexibility in implementing the work plan. That flexibility is important should there be any delays in the study development or a necessary rescheduling of agencies should issues arise during the year. It also provides a buffer for studies that may extend multiple fiscal years or increase in scope due to issues or difficulties that may arise in the development of the municipal service review or SPR update. It also provides for any potential shift in approach, for example, moving from an in-house prepared document to a consultant prepared document. Consultants typically have higher fees, higher fees, so it would be a more costly process. To date, we have not had any funds available for CEQA analysis, so this will allow for some CEQA analysis in the future. This table is in your agenda packet is table 1, and it lays out the proposed budget of $263,800 for this next fiscal year. The staff is proposing, the executive committee is proposing a apportionment fees remain the same at $265,000. The revenue interest would be expected to be the same. And the balance at the beginning of the fiscal year for reserves is expected to be $106,750, and that target is $115,950 for this, based on the budget for the proposed budget for next fiscal year. So expenditures, we have essentially 4 categories. Basic services, which is our staffing for the executive officer, our analyst, and our clerk. Second, we have our services and supplies, which includes our typical office operations, any training, commissioner stipends, and also includes our legal services. Our third expenditure item is our work plan. We propose 16 agencies in the next fiscal year, and I will touch on that in more detail in a moment. And we also have application processing. Our work program is developed each fiscal year, which identifies the focus of staff's time in the next budget cycle. It consists of our basic services and our work plan budget accounts. Our staffing includes policy development, development of the next fiscal year budget, our commission and committee meetings, carrying out the direction of the commission, and keeping the office operations moving forward. It also includes our work plan, which is our tentative plan for the future work products to meet our state mandates for the next fiscal year.
Could you hold for a moment? People,
Sure.
if you're not on speaking, please mute. We are getting background noise coming from some of you who are unmuted. Thank you. Go ahead.
I think we need to ask Jerry to mute his
You hearing me?
phone.
Nothing going on in my office.
No. I'm sorry, Geraldo. Jerry Gonzalez.
Oh.
No, not you, Jerry Ward. Jerry Gonzalez. If he can, what does he have to do to mute, Uma?
Star 6.
Yeah, if Jerry can star 6, I think that'll help us.
Okay, it did improve. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Uma.
Thank you. Per the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, sphere of influence updates are required every 5 years for agencies providing municipal services. We do have a local policy that specifies those municipal services apply to water, sewer, fire, and police services. The scope of service of studies can range from abbreviated in nature to more comprehensive. Both meet the mandate, but the comprehensive is typically applied when there are more difficult or more services are being provided by that specific agency. So to date, the first round of sphere updates, or I should say through 2018, the first round of sphere updates were more abbreviated in nature in order to catch up to the state mandates. We're now in the second round for most agencies, although not all. And typically the scope is determined again by the agency services and issues that are identified. So for our next fiscal year, these are expected to be more comprehensive in nature to address the development pressures in the Ukiah Valley. In addition, we have a multi-year drought that is emphasizing critical water issues, which has played into the identification of our next fiscal year work plan, which includes the water districts that we intend to break out into the coastal water districts and the inland water districts. The City of Ukiah and the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District have already been initiated, but will be rolling into the next fiscal year. So the estimated budget you see for these are not in their entirety for these agencies, but will be the estimated budget used in the next fiscal year. So as a reminder, no CEQA is included in these estimates, and we would hope to rely on the work plan contingency should CEQA be required, and depending on the level of CEQA. So this is the proposed budget summary. It is table 2 in your agenda packet. Again, the apportionments are proposed for $265,000, which is the same as last fiscal or this current fiscal year. The basic services is expected to increase approximately 16%. That's mostly due to inflationary costs and a cost of living increase. The services and supplies are expected to increase only slightly, again, mostly for inflationary purposes for insurance and the trainings and conferences. The work plan, we are planning for approximately 16 agencies, so that has increased from this current fiscal year. And so the estimated operations total is $263,800. The recommendations before you today are to adopt Resolution 21-22-15, approving the proposed budget and work program for the following fiscal year, and to direct staff to distribute that drafted budget and work program for review and comment to our funding agencies. And finally, to schedule a public hearing for June 6th for the final budget. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. And I will note that the executive committee did meet and review this and are recommending to the commission to approve. Noteworthy is the carryover, even though there's an increased expenditure noted, we were able to keep the pool of the 3-member groups similar to the last few years. And so we were able to accommodate increased spending because of carryover. So I'll open it up to commissioners and members of the public, starting with commissioners. This is a public hearing. So any questions, comments by commissioners first? Yes.
Mr. Chair, thank you. In the review of the committee, did you discuss any concerns for being having a shortfall of the budget if there's more work? But what would Plan B looks like?
Well, staff has tried to address that through the new policy on charges and fees and recompensing staff time. And I think that hopefully will help us moving forward. Am I correct in that assumption?
That is correct. We do have new service rates that will go into effect starting July 1 of this year. And so those will apply to any services provided under our fee schedule and include a portion of overhead and long-term planning costs. And we will assess those as we start our budget development at the beginning of next year, calendar year. But we will have those funds available should there be an increase in workload this next fiscal year. We also have the work plan contingency that is proposed, so there will be that cash balance that could be available should the commission direct that use.
One of the interesting guidelines from the state law that regulates LAFCOs is that we're not supposed to shrink our budget without specific findings as to why we are reducing our budget year to year. With that, Glenn, go ahead, Commissioner McGorty.
Sure. First a comment, Una, I'm really having a lot of trouble hearing you. Your voice is breaking up. I don't know if you're able to change anything on your microphone, but there is some difficulty there. The second thing is I'm curious about Ukiah Valley Sanitation District work plan, because it seems like that was on the first meeting that I attended at LAFCO, and I think somewhere you indicate you're 20% finished. What is going on that is making us so slow to get through that plan?
Thank you for the question. It has been a number of starts and stops on this MSR sphere update. We have been coordinating with both sanitation district and city staff on moving both of those MSRs forward. They both are in progress, and we had presented a timeline for completion of those development and completion of those work products at our last meeting, and we are proposing to do a workshop or get into the workshops this late summer. So we're moving towards that, and again, there have been delays, but there's been a lot of coordination through monthly and bi-weekly meetings at the staff level to move these forward.
So what is the complication? What makes it so difficult to come up with the MSRs and complete them?
The city and the sanitation district in particular have been required a lot of coordination to move forward. There are overlapping services, and the provision of services are very connected between the agencies. We have been working with the city to move the MSR for the city forward parallel to the general plan update, which is supported by both under CKH and under our own policies, and makes sense from a comprehensive planning level effort. So along with that, the sanitation district is kind of following along the same timeline. There are efficiencies to be had in that approach, and it also will be important to make sure that there are consistent analyses in both of those documents.
Okay, any further comment? Commissioner Ward.
Yes, thank you. Uma, what is the breakdown for the work plan of $70,000? There's 4 projects, 3 projects, 4 projects.
Yes, that's included in attachment 2, which is on page 44 of your agenda packet. So approximately $15,000 in the next fiscal year for the city of Ukiah, $10,000 for the next fiscal year for the sanitation district, and then $20,000 for the coastal water districts, which consist of 6 districts, and then $25,000 for the inland water districts, which consist of 8 districts.
Okay, thank you. I have, with regard to the cash reserves, I've come up with approximately 42,000 as opposed to your 38, which represents about half of your work plan estimate for the next fiscal year. And you're suggesting that extra money go into the work plan. I will give you a detail just for the minutes anyway. Legal would be $7,000. GIS would be $1,879. In-county travel $1,574, travel and lodging $62.50, conferences $4,100, and work plan. I think at the end of June you'll have about 20,000 left in that work plan. Also in our budget for the next fiscal year, I think you've overestimated office expense by $1,000 because this current year we put in $1,000 for a computer, and I don't think you've made any recommendations for any more office equipment for the next year. So add that all up and it's about $42,000. So what I'm recommending is that go into your work plan, but before I come up with a proposal, I'm a little not concerned, but I think it's been discussed at the last meeting that the city of Ukiah is actually looking at consolidating with the Sand District, and there may not be a need for an MSR or SOI. I know there's ongoing ad hoc committee meeting discussion about that. And then our next item on our agenda is talking about the State Water Board doing reorganization efforts in the water for the water districts in the valley. So it seems to me that we might want to see how these all pan out before we spend a lot of money on SOIs and MSRs before, but that's just a suggestion. So my proposal would be to take the extra money and add to your work plan the city of Point Arena, which is a city operation, to get it done because it's quite due as well, and utilize your time. The other thing you need to take in consideration is that the city told us that their general plan wouldn't be completed until late December. So that's 8 months from now. What are we going to be doing that's going to generate that kind of cost between now and then? We could be utilizing that money right now to do your staffing to do the city of Point Arena or something else. I'm trying to get more MSR SOIs completed. We're just getting stagnated in the Ukiah Valley right now, and a lot of things are still needing to be done. So I believe we have enough money to do that. I think you have enough staffing. I think you even mentioned last meeting that you have a assistant planner now on payroll. So and I'm sorry, but it's been several years I've been pounding the pavement about getting some of these MSR SOIs updated and get them updated for our 5-year reviews. So those are some of the things I'd like to talk about. And I think that's about all I have for now. Thank you.
With those comments, first of all, let's go to Scott Ignacio in the city of Point Arena rep. Are you prepared for an MSR? Do you feel it's timely?
I believe staff's working with our city manager, Paul Anderson, on that. And I just wanted to clarify, when Jerry referenced city of Point Arena and the city, Point Arena has not made any statement that the general plan will be ready by this fall. I think he was referring to Ukiah.
I'm sorry, Ukiah, city of Ukiah.
And with that, we'll go to Matt Funberger, Commissioner. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I would like to speak to one of the points that Commissioner Ward brought up. The potential consolidation within the Ukiah Valley is at best not near, and at worst possibly possibly not happening again. So I think that it's important that we continue with the MSRs and SOIs for all of those districts at this time. I would not recommend removing the monies at this point and reallocating them elsewhere.
And with that, Uma, do you have any comment?
Thank you. I had a couple of comments in response regarding the work plan contingencies. So which essentially that is the cash balance or rollover from this fiscal year into next. The amount that is allocated for the work plan for this fiscal year will still be necessary as we complete the City of Ukiah and the Sanitation District MSRs. So while it looks like cash rollover that is available to put towards new MSRs or to add to our work plan for next fiscal year, it's actually money that will still be applied to the City of Ukiah and the Sanitation District MSR and sphere updates. So I think that's important to note. Also, our staffing is limited. I mean, we are taking on 16 MSR agencies this next fiscal year. I think it would be difficult for staff to add anything to that work plan, just for the staff capacity. The other thing I wanted to note is that the discussion about consolidation is happening, and we do have an item later in our agenda packet today that will present a little bit more information about this. But whether we prepare the municipal service reviews or sphere of influence updates for those water districts, or whether that becomes a special study to support the consolidation efforts, those are still items that would come through the work plan budget. I think I would agree with Commissioner Frohnberger that we need to keep them on our work plan as is for now, and we can do reviews of our work plan throughout the next fiscal year and adjust accordingly.
Thank you. And further commissioner comment, questions, and then we'll go to the public. Commissioner, before we go to you, Commissioner Ward, is there any other commissioner wishing to speak? Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Ward.
Thank you. If you read our audit report, you could see that our apportionment fees from 2011 to 2020 have roughly been 125,000 to 135,000 a year. And now we're up to 265, and it's almost doubled in the last year. So I just bring that up that our apportionment fees are increasing, but as far as I'm concerned, we're not getting a lot of our MSR, SOI mandates updated. So that's my last point, and we'll move on.
And I'll just make the point that we are in several states of emergency ongoing, so we do have to respond to on the ground issues. And Commissioner Gonzalez, I see you unmuted. Do you have any comment to make? Oh, now you're muted again. Okay. With that, we'll open this public hearing to the public, please. Raise your hand if you wish to speak to the commission about our budget and work plan today. Just unmute yourselves and speak up, and we'll recognize you. Okay, doesn't look like anyone's coming forward. Today, we will be asking to schedule the public hearing for June 6th, the final hearing, and that will lead to adoption. So I'll ask for a motion to schedule the public hearing for June 6th.
Ignacio, so moves, Chair.
Second out there.
Frohnberger, second.
And we're still in the public hearing, so actually I should close the public hearing before we do a roll call. Any other comments or questions before I do so?
Chair Orth?
Yes.
There are recommendations on page 37 of the agenda packet, and we do have a draft resolution that would adopt the proposed budget and work program. So I wanted to bring that to attention.
Well, I saw that, but I thought, was that for today's consideration then?
Yes, correct. The commission adopts a proposed budget and work plan, and then work program, and then we distribute that document with the budget, and then we schedule a final budget hearing for June.
Then I look for, first of all, I'll close the public hearing, and I'll look for the motion to be withdrawn and a new motion to approve resolution number 2021-2215, which adopts the proposed budget and work plan for fiscal year 22-23 and schedule a further public hearing for June 6th.
Ignacio withdraws previous motion and moves this motion.
Frohnberger removes previous second and Reese seconds for the new motion.
Thank you for correcting me. Any discussion, please, by the public to our motion? And Glenn, did you have your hand up?
I did. I just wanted to echo Commissioner Ward's comments about concerns about our budget and moving forward with some of our projects, and particularly the MSR SOIs on the sanitation districts in the city of Ukiah. It just seems like it's taking a long time, and it's hard to understand because we've talked about it a lot. It seems like it gets a lot of attention, and that it's only 10% finished according to the work plan that we have. And I don't know what other resources Director Hinman, CEO Hinman needs, but we need to wrap these things up and keep moving. So I don't know what's the holdup is, but maybe we can have an offline discussion.
I will just note that this has been decades in the making, Commissioner McGorty. It's not been easy, and there is progress being made that hasn't been made in the past. So believe it or not, there is actual progress being made here, and it's been 40 years in the making. So
good grief.
Yes, it's been, and go ahead, EO Hinman.
Thank you. I would also like to remind the Commission that we did provide a very comprehensive update on the status of both the City of Ukiah and the Sanitation District sphere update process at our last Commission meeting, and would refer them to that agenda packet, which is posted on our website for a detailed schedule over to complete those documents this calendar year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion on the floor. Any discussion to the motion? Then go ahead, Clerk Meadows, with the roll call.
Commissioner Mulhern.
Yes.
Commissioner McGorty.
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez. I'll come back to Commissioner Gonzalez. Commissioner Ward.
No.
Commissioner Frohnberger.
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
As a reminder, it's *6 to unmute.
Here he comes. We're just waiting for your vote now. You're unmuted.
Oh no.
Oh, he muted again. There he is. Okay, we're waiting to hear a yay or a nay. We're still not hearing you.
Request a tally of the vote so far, please.
Yes, we have Commissioner Mulhern, McGorty, and Frohnberger and Ignacio, all for yes. Commissioner Ward is a no, and then waiting on Gonzalez, and then Chair Orth.
Chair, due to technical difficulty, I'd like to move forward with the vote.
Okay, I'll go ahead and say yay.
Okay. And I guess, so how would I mark Commissioner Gonzalez's vote?
You give us a tally of the yays and nays and an absent vote.
Okay. All right. So we've got an absent vote from Commissioner Gonzalez, a no from Commissioner Ward, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses.
And I see Commissioner, here he is. He's coming back on.
All right, connecting to audio.
He's
Nope.
reconnecting him. Okay, there he is. Unmute yourself, Commissioner Gonzalez.
That was a yes.
Okay,
All right.
okay,
So
there we are.
the vote is 6 to 1.
All right, thank you. And we'll carry the agenda. There is no workshop item today, so we'll go to Matters for discussion and possible action, 7A. This will be the presentation from the State Water Resources Control Board. And this will be Michelle Frederick, presenter. Uma, do you want to introduce this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair Orth. Last month, I participated in a meeting with the State Water Resources Control Board staff and water managers from the Ukiah Valley to hear an update on discussions regarding the potential consolidation or reorganization of water service providers in the Ukiah Valley. The meeting was hosted by the State Water Board staff, Michelle Frederick of the Safe and Affordable Funding for Equity and Resilience, or SAFER program. Michelle has years of knowledge of Mendocino County water services, as she used to work in our region's office of the State Water Board Drinking Water Division. As a reminder, in the last update of the Ukiah Valley Water District MSRs, the Commission adopted determinations recommending consolidation of water service providers for more efficient and reliable provision of water services in the Valley. The current drought conditions and state support for water supply reliability and efficiencies with the current drought conditions, a letter of support from the Commission has been requested that will be useful in furthering the planning process amongst the agencies and for potential applications for grant funding for consolidation or reorganization. Michelle has kindly offered to give our Commission an informational presentation on the SAFER program, options and current discussions for water partnerships and consolidations, and the current opportunities and support for planning and funding for such efforts that are available to our local agencies. Michelle, thank you for taking the time to present today, and you should be able to share your screen.
Great, thank you, EO Hinman. Let me share my screen here. Hopefully you all will be able to see it. Can you all see that now? Great,
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, commissioners, and thank you for having me this morning. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Michelle Frederick, as CEO Hinman said, and I used to work in the Ukiah Valley. I was the district engineer during the 2014 drought, and so I'm very familiar with the area. It has seemed to me that we've had a sort of unique opportunity. In the past few months, there's been a lot of interest and discussion beyond, I think, what historically has been there as an opportunity for partnership. And this is something the State Water Board is really behind and trying to find economies of scale and develop resiliency. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of a background on the programs that we're starting now and have been working on to share sort of where the State Water Board is going and to better help you understand what we're seeing. So just as an introduction to that, statewide, there's about 7,300 public water systems, as opposed to about 900 wastewater utility providers and 75 electric utility providers. So we are a much more fragmented utility sector than wastewater or electricity. And so one of the things that we have been working on at the State Water Board is developing, and I'm trying to be careful with the word consolidation because I know it has different meanings to you all than it does necessarily to us, but to work on partnerships, to work on developing less fragmented infrastructure. And with that, one of the things that our program has done is what's called a needs analysis. And so we looked at our water systems that are both failing or that are at risk of failing. And of our approximately like I said, we have about 7,300 community water systems, non-transient, non-community water systems, or transient non-community water systems, which gives you the whole gamut between the city of Ukiah down to the waste or the gas station that's on the corner that may be along the freeway. So a big range in what we do, but about 77% of our community water systems in California serve less than 1,000 connections. And 90% of our violations occur in community systems that serve less than 500 connections. So what we find is these very small systems don't have the economies of scale, and we are therefore trying to develop partnerships. We also find some of our larger systems would benefit from partnerships as well, be they due to water rights, be they due to just greater efficiencies. And I know that's something that the LAFCOs and the State Water Board share, is that idea of greater efficiencies between the utility sectors, or in the utility sector. So one of the things that we have done is an assessment statewide. We looked at risk water systems, and we also looked at how do we deal with partnering for resilience, because certainly drought is a significant challenge that we're dealing with statewide. And one of the things that we have decided is like creating regional solutions, regional partnerships, regional consolidations is really one of the best ways for us to be able to address these issues.
Michelle, would you pause for a moment?
Sure, happily.
Commissioner Frauenberger, you have a question?
Uh,
Your hand is up.
yes. But you know what? I'm going to reserve it until the end. I'll let you finish
Thank
up.
you. Okay, Michelle, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And so since about 2016, we have completed about 196 consolidations or water partnerships across the state. We have a map where you can go in and sort of explore the variety of different partnerships or consolidations that have been done. And we also have various success stories so that people can get a sense of how this is working across the state. So just some tools for you to be aware of too. We also have a consolidation and partnership outreach tool where you can go in and you can see where water systems are located, where different domestic well layers might be, the number of domestic wells, say in a square mile, which ones may be disadvantaged, which ones are at risk, which ones are failing. Red indicates failing, at risk is yellow. And so there's a variety of tools there, because I recognize that you guys cover more than just the Ukiah Valley, and there's a lot going on up with drought in other parts of your jurisdiction. So I just wanted to make sure that you had some other tools as well. But definitely, it also includes census data, so things you can look at from a broader standpoint too. But one of the things that we've been doing is writing letters to water systems that are near each other, recommending consolidation, also doing partnership workshops. And out of this came some of our discussions in the Ukiah Valley. Right now, about 40% of our failing water systems are looking at consolidation or discussing different feasibilities for that. But one of our main focuses is to increase sort of larger consolidation projects, recognizing that with the funding that we have right now, this is really sort of a generational opportunity. And it's also, frankly, just more efficient for us at the State Water Board to be doing larger projects that encompass everyone, that encompass the islands, that encompass small water systems or domestic wells that may be nearby. It's just a more efficient way for us to work. And so with that in mind, we have added some consolidation incentives that were not previously here for a receiving water system. So if a water system takes in smaller water systems, either disadvantaged, so DAC here means disadvantaged community, if they do a full consolidation, they can get up to a maximum of $5 million in an incentive grant and up to $10 million of zero interest loan for their own projects. So these are in addition to us paying for the consolidation. We also provide the receiving water system with various incentives. So we're really trying to push this forward. I can go more into those incentives. There are different incentive amounts per type. Like a severely disadvantaged gets more incentive than non-disadvantaged community, but really working on trying to make consolidations interesting for our large water systems so that we can see more of these. But as I was talking about the generational opportunities, a lot of that is around the new funding sources that we have. We, under the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund, we have $1.3 billion over the next 10 years that's focused on primarily small disadvantaged communities. We also have drought funding. We have some other general funding. We have the new drinking water infrastructure funding that's coming in. We have principal forgiveness in our safe and our revolving fund, our drinking water state revolving fund. We have other bonds. So it's really, we are trying to get a lot of the funding out the door that we have and wanting to see it go to things that are sustainable and long-term and forward-thinking, not putting band-aids on small water systems that are not ever going to be sustainable, but really moving larger projects forward. So as I said, we've, additionally new drought and water resilience packages on the horizon, also potentially more federal infrastructure funding from that law. So that all of that has brought us to the Ukiah Valley. Out of one of our water partnership meetings, some of our staff met with the city of Ukiah and also some of the other water providers in that area, including Mr. Walker and Mr. White. And so, I've had conversations now about what would some sort of consolidation of the various utilities in the Ukiah area look like. And, I think we are still, and I heard the discussion earlier, we are still in sort of early phases, but trying to move this forward as quickly as possible so as to capitalize on that infrastructure funding that we have, which, is more of a first come, first serve opportunity that, like I said, is really a generational opportunity that we don't know how long it will last. And so one of the things that our funding sources are going to be interested in is knowing upfront that everybody's interested, that we're not going to spin our wheels on something that isn't going to be productive. And so one of the requests that we asked both Mr. Walker and Mr. White was, to provide some sort of letter of support. It doesn't have to be a full agreement that suggests, that this is a done deal, but just something that says, in general, we're supporting the concept of consolidation in the Ukiah Valley and sort of an understanding of what that means for them. And we would ask if, and when we talked to EO Hinman, we also asked her if something like that would be similar from your LAFCO in order to just start the process and make it clear that we're all in this together and that we're all sort of moving this forward. And so with that, that's sort of the conclusion of my presentation, and just wanted to open it up to questions or thoughts that you all may have.
Okay, Commissioner Thornberger, you reserved the question. Move it forward now.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Thank you. I've got actually several, but I'll cede after this first statement. Actually, during your program, you stated that 90% of violations throughout the state of California were from water systems that have less than 500 or less customers. Is that accurate to what you said?
Correct.
And what is the? I mean, I think that's a little bit disingenuous, because I would say that 90% of the water systems in California are less than 500 persons, just in my experience.
Yeah, I think they're about 70%.
Okay. And most of those violations I would also categorize as not being water quality issues. Typically, they're the ones that I've seen having been in this field for about 30 years, is that it's reporting issues or laboratory problems.
No, actually, that I would say is not correct. The ones that we were looking at were predominantly water quality violations. We
So
have a whole list of monitoring reporting violations that
Sure.
are in addition to that.
I understand. So you were looking at just that,
Yes,
that one thing.
yes.
All right. Go ahead. I've got a couple other things, but I'm gonna cede to somebody else so that they can move on.
That's good. Go ahead, Commissioner McGorty.
So thank you. Michelle, one of the companies you did mention was Regina Water Company, which is very heavily represented in the first district where I'm supervisor. And I just wondered if you've had any communications with them. I know that there's issues with the company with water supply and just aging infrastructure. And I just was curious if you reached out to them and what the response was.
You know, I haven't personally reached out to them. I am aware that our district office has had discussions with them. I have heard as well that there are some concerns about aging infrastructure and I think succession planning as well. It is something that Mr. White and I had discussed, and I know at some point there were discussions about acquisitions from other investor-owned utilities, and also you know, we had some discussions with the city of Ukiah about whether or not they would be included in this, but I haven't reached out specifically to Regina.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I have, in these consolidations, are they done kind of in a scenario like Sonoma County Water, where essentially there's a wholesale water supplier and the existing companies stay intact with their customer base and management, or do they completely fuse together where they're run by one organization?
I would say the majority of them are run by one organization. I mean, that is a possibility to create a JPA or something like that. That would be a water agency. I think you've already got some JPAs in this area anyhow, but usually it is one larger system is what we're looking at to get the most efficiencies.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll recognize Sean White of the city of Ukiah. Come forward.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to address Supervisor McGorty's questions about Regina. Both myself and Jared Walker had a number of conversations with Regina, which is a private company and is currently not available for sale. So they're not going to participate in this.
Okay. Further questions or comments by commissioners? Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Federick, you realize that LAFCO can't initiate any consolidations on our own. But what's your feeling talking to the agencies in the Ukiah Valley about the development of making it consolidated into either one agency or whatnot? What's your feeling on it?
I mean, to be honest, I was more optimistic than I think I've ever been. The fact that, and I do know that there have been several iterations of discussion of consolidation in this area. You know, I think the fact that the city of Ukiah was reaching out to us, to me, was a really interesting opportunity, because we have in the past not had such broad support from folks that I'm seeing now. And so I am, and it times well with the fact that we have funding that we're trying to work to move out the door, and consolidation is a big portion of the programmatic changes we're trying to do.
Thank you. And you mentioned that there's approximately $1.1 billion that could be available to assist in consolidations, paying off debt. Does that debt include federal monies?
You know, there is restructuring funding for disadvantaged communities. I'm guessing that we're talking about Redwood Valley.
Yes.
In this discussion. they would likely have to be a disadvantaged community for us to make that decision. One of the things that we have struggled with Redwood Valley is to come up with whether or not they fall under the disadvantaged category. But there is, if they were to fall under that, there may be some restructuring funding that could be achieved. I know that we're, in some disadvantaged communities looking at O&M support and doing some pilot studies around that. And one of those possibilities is restructuring. But I'm not 100. I would hesitate to say that we would 100% do something like that.
Well, we are disadvantaged and we only get 50 gallons a day of water.
Yeah,
That's
no,
a big disadvantage.
Yeah.
Commissioner, go ahead. Continue, Michelle.
Well, Commissioner Ward, do you have, I mean, this is sort of, maybe we can take it offline, but if you have any sort of documentation that shows Redwood Valley as disadvantaged, if we could talk about that later, I would really appreciate it because we've struggled with the census data.
Okay, I'll check into it and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to Commissioner Mulhern and then our Executive Officer for the county, Darcy.
I just wanted to say that for generations, a lot of these smaller agencies were held up with leadership that was truly invested. And I find this in not only with water, but in our trash service and in many of our municipalities and how we work with our service providers. Changes in leaderships can sometimes challenge an agency. And I'm glad that the city of Ukiah and the water districts are talking and working together. I realize we may not be able to take it slow, but I appreciate that this effort has come forward to the board.
And Darcy, go ahead.
Thank you. Darcy Antola, Interim CEO of the County of Mendocino. Michelle, I would like to work with you and Jerry as well. We have been able, depending on your definition of disadvantaged community, the county has worked diligently with the state and other funding resources to secure mitigation and recovery monies for Redwood Valley based on its census and income levels. So maybe there's an offline discussion that my team can have with you to help support that.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
And I would just make the comment that the situation in Redwood Valley with the federal loan has been a sore point for decades. And if that can get resolved, that would be a huge step forward here in Mendocino. With that, go ahead, Scott Ignacio.
I just have a request from Michelle. Is it possible that you would be able to provide your presentation with E.O. Hinman to distribute amongst the commissioners for further review? And would you be all right if it was hosted, that I'm assuming it's PowerPoint, would be hosted on the website should the public want to look at it again?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
And go ahead, Commissioner McCourty.
So I just want to make one other point about this, and I'm thinking about this from the point of view of resiliency in light of climate change. The fact that you, as chair of the Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency, we have significant underground water in the Ukiah Valley Basin, and being able to connect with some of the water companies that are reliant on surface water is huge, just from the point of view of safety and the viability of our smaller water systems. So it's one of the things that I believe it's worth pursuing, just to echo what Commissioner Mulhern talked about, that this is a time where we're in a really great position to make a move to affect the next 100 years. And I'm a big supporter of us trying to find some way to work together, whether it's as a JPA or consolidations, whatever makes sense and whatever makes people comfortable.
And I will note that the staff is asking for direction to prepare a letter of support that would come back to the commission for approval. And I'll go to Matt. Go ahead. Commissioner Farnberger.
Yes. Sorry, I was unmuting. I tend to agree that, a consolidation in some form or another would probably be a good thing for all of those involved within the Ukiah Valley area. As long as that consolidation is done, on the in the public view, and that also that all of the districts that are represented, are actually do have their ability to put in their input, because there's a question right now, as in my mind at least, whether or not the constituency really understands about that. I think that, that in the long run, it gives the Ukiah area a much bigger voice, and that the ability to obtain funding and to get work done, to reduce redundancy and get rid of bureaucracy. I think all of those things could be enhanced. My concern is that why would we be in a hurry? I understand that there's money and it's finite, but doing something like this takes careful time and consideration. And this group has already been meeting for years and has not gotten to any sort of consideration or consensus. And in fact, several times it's been broken apart over what, in my mind, are seemingly relatively small issues, and not insurmountable. So I guess my concern is that, that there's once again a push. We went through this last month with something else, and then a couple months ago, why do we get these things in this point where it's in such a hurry? I mean, yes, I do want to get rid of bureaucracy. Yes, I want to get things done, but I think that this, like many other things, needs a careful amount of consideration. And as far as LAFCO supporting a situation like this, I think it's already implicit within LAFCO that we support consolidations. I think that adding our support to a specific one is improper, and I don't believe that we should be doing that sort of thing, especially if it's one of our mandates in the first place. So I am going to be a no at this point.
And I'll recognize Elizabeth from the Flood Control District.
Morning, everyone. Nice to see you. I'm the general manager of the Russian River Flood Control District. Michelle, nice to see you again, and thank you for your presentation. Kind of following on Matt's comments, which were not coordinated, but I would just encourage LAFCO and all of the agencies and the city to, and really this is for all of our entities in Mendocino County, to be really transparent and provide the public opportunity to comment, and to not just to comment through the regular means of the agenda notification, but to make an effort to actually help the public, educate the public on what's going on and how it will impact them, how changes will alter their services, their finances, etc. And to keep in mind as well that the proposed consolidation or various options within it, other entities will be affected by this as well. So we would like the opportunity to, be made aware of what's happening. So far, the state's been great. I've met with the state several times about this issue with Michelle's staff, and it's been very helpful. But I just want to say, let's keep that up and expand that effort a little bit more. And thanks to LAFCO for making this presentation and keeping this in the public.
So let's go to, we'll go to Glenn and then Mr. White in the city of Ukiah.
So one of the things as a supervisor, as I look at Mendocino County and I look at our strategic plan, and it's really clear that a key issue we hope to address is housing, and providing services in terms of water and sewer is a really critical part of that. The county on its own doesn't seem to have capacity to really provide the kind of infrastructure that we really need. So it becomes really necessary for us to think regionally and work with our particularly incorporated cities, because they seem to be much better organized in order to make these things happen. So that's why I agree with the two commissioners who have talked about transparency and openness, and also really good discussion with stakeholders about this, is about the what's likely to happen in going into the future if we don't have a more reliable, resilient water supply. And that's how I'm on my own property, where I have some water issues with wells that go dry in the summer. I back it up with stored water, and also the ability to treat river water if I need to. And I mean, we have to think in terms of duplications and triplications even for resiliency on water. And with the climate change we've been experiencing in the last 10 years, anything that we can do to make us more resilient on water supplies, I think is going to be critical for our well-being. And so that's why I support this effort.
Uma, go ahead, and then we'll go to Mr. White.
Thank you. Just wanted to ask, Michelle, could you discontinue the share function so we can see everyone?
Sure. Sorry,
Thank you.
I didn't realize it was open.
Okay, Mr. White.
I just wanted to address the issue about, sort of transparency and doing it in the public. We're just nowhere near having even a presentable idea at the moment. And one of the concerns of our ad hoc, who's met just a handful of times, is whether or not we can get through CALAFCO and trying to get them invested in the process, which is sort of why we're here today. We're trying to, we have a number of chicken and egg issues. One of them is getting our leadership to sort of buy into the viability, not just LAFCO. So we're very early, but we would really appreciate just sort of a vote of confidence from this commission, so we can sort of start moving forward. I think we can do that. We can get the letter of interest from our own boards, which will all be public, and then we can start moving forward. The timeliness is important. The pot of money that the state board has is competitive and first come, first serve. So this isn't a hurry up for the sake of being in a hurry, but it's going to take a significant investment to actually do this. If we're going to do it in infrastructure, there's a lot of disparate systems that will need quite a bit of infrastructure to connect them so they actually function as a unit, which is, I think, what we'd all want in the end. So we're not in a hurry, but also time is of the essence. That's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Frontberger.
Yes. I believe one of the other commissioners mentioned made a statement about the Sonoma County Water Agency. I can't remember exactly who it was, but that model can work in certain ways. But there have been, over the years, several groups that have broken out and actually caused an increase in the amount of special districts in Sonoma County because of perceived concern over this larger agency unable to meet the needs and concerns of the small communities, and also that the costs associated with it that are spread across an entire area like that affects folks that have lower incomes at a much greater amount than the people as a whole. So I just wanted to talk to about that one real quick, and that. Once again, this group, the JPA, has been going on for several years now, and there's been other iterations in the past that have done this. The reason that I speak of transparency is because I don't believe that it's out there at this time, and I realize that the city, being a latecomer to this, may not be aware of all the work that's been done. They probably do, but they may not be aware of all the work, the groundwork that's been done up until this point with the JPA. And the specific concerns and problems that have gone on. So once again, I'm all for caution on this, and that people need to be aware, and that even though there is a time frame with this money from the state, which I do appreciate, that it can't be, the work can't be thrown out for the time.
Okay, I'm not sure if Mr. White has still got his hand up to speak. If If not, then
No, I'm sorry, I'll lower it. So
thank
oversight.
you,
Mhm.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes, thank you. I support the letter. I wish that this was on our agenda 10 years ago, so we could be a lot further along. I would like to also see, there's a lot of, I think the county has a ad hoc committee, the city of Ukiah has got one. I'd like to see that they push that more than our staff getting involved in it so that our staff can concentrate on other things. We, again, we can't force consolidation. We can just approve it when it comes before us. But I like to see the county and the city really work on this and get it developed so we can see the consolidation. We certainly need it, especially Redwood Valley. So I support the letter. Thanks.
And I will also say I will be supporting such a letter. I would like to see us possibly concentrate on some form of water forum for September. People will be in the midst of their shortages. Also, we'll be heavily into our fire season, which is related to water resiliency issues. And if the water board, working with the water districts in the city, can come forward with an educational forum, I would say in the month of September, I think that would allow the public to engage with this discussion with the different districts in the city and the state water board and with LAFCO. So I do believe the public do need to be brought in. And I think September is a good month when people come back for school purposes, their vacations are over, and the water shortage will be rearing its head to demonstrate the need for the discussion. And I'll open up the discussion to other commissioners or the public for any response before looking for a motion to direct staff to prepare a letter of support. Go ahead, Jerry Gonzalez, Commissioner.
I just kind of wanted to echo that while I agree with Commissioner Frohnberger, as far as the transparency, I would support this. I'm up for a good wedding as long as the parties want to be married. So I think that that's my comment at this point. I would support it as long as the parties are amenable. So.
Thank you. Any further comments before a motion? Then I'm looking for a motion to direct staff to prepare a letter of support. And of course, that'll be discussed by us at the next commission meeting as to the wording. Once
Gonzalez would like to move.
Second, Mulhern.
And Glenn, you want to speak to the motion?
Oh, I was just gonna do the same, so they beat me to the punch.
And Elizabeth, Redwood, flood control.
Yeah, Russian River Flood Control District again, thank you. So I have a question for E.O. Henman. In the 2000, I think it was 13 or 14 Ukiah Valley Special Districts MSR, there was a recommendation for consolidation, from LAFCO, but I believe that did not include the city. Is that correct? Do you recall off the top of your head?
Yeah, that specific determination did not include the city. It was more directed towards the water districts surrounding the city and also included Hopland PUD, I believe, in that determination.
Thank you. And so then my next question is to the commission. Again, what are you supporting exactly? I know you're going to hopefully look at the letter next month, the draft letter, before you would do a final approval. But under what determination are you going to make this recommendation? The MSR, I could see the consolidation of the special districts, but that MSR is quite old as well. So, again, there are other entities in the Ukiah Valley that the trickle-down effect is something to consider. So I'd ask you to explore that.
I would hope the letter would focus on engaging the public with these discussions and making them aware that this is an ongoing discussion and where it's at and where it might be moving towards. I think For example, again, I bring this up, Brick Trails is working with the state to take wastewater to domestic water. So there are opportunities to create new water resources if you're working regionally. And I just think that we're facing the kind of climatic impacts that we really need to be looking out of the box and moving forward. And I think the more we engage the public in these discussions, the more helpful it will be. And I agree with the commissioner's comments that the public need to be aware these discussions are ongoing. Go ahead, Commissioner McGorty.
Sure, thank you. So again, I think what we're after is encouraging a plan that would create a sustainable water system for the Ukiah Valley Basin and have all people willing to participate to be part of this effort. So if there is an organization that just says there's no way I could ever entertain this because I'm fine the way I am, then they probably wouldn't be involved. We're not going to force anybody into a shotgun marriage. So I think it's really important that we have a vision and then a very well-informed discussion with our communities before we make any plans. I do agree with Sean White that time is of the essence because we have an opportunity here for funding and it's not going to be forever. So this is a timely issue.
Commissioner Fontenberger.
Yeah, and believe me, Elizabeth and I are not actually working in tandem. I don't know, but I would like to echo the fact that once again, this is that's part of our tasks as a LAFCO is to encourage the consolidation and the working together of districts. I don't think at this time that we should be driving the agenda by making these sort of commitments. And I think that it is contrary to what we are supposed to be as an independent group made up of members of these different groups. And that's all I got to say about that. Sorry.
And my response is LAFCO is able to be a forum to bring the dispirited communities that are in a very large county. As you know, we're going to be doing MSRs both inland and to the coastal region on water issues. And so again, the more we can involve the public in this process, and I think LAFCO has a role to help involve the public in the overall process and studying consolidation. I don't think that means that we're out front saying you will consolidate in any way, but it is a way to get continue this ball rolling towards good planning and efficiency delivery of service. And I think that's indeed our role. And I do think that we can lead the discussion, or I should join the discussion in the sense of supporting forums and coordinating activities between the providers. And I think that MSR process is part of that program and process. And anything we do in this next year will inform the MSRs in our work plan for the water agencies. So with that, I'm looking for a motion.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I think there's a motion on the table.
Excuse me. Any further discussion on the motion? Then Clerk Meadows, go ahead and do the roll call.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulhern,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Frohnberger.
No.
Thank you. Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Commissioner McGorty,
Yes.
Chair Orth.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 6-1.
And certainly any commissioner wishes to speak with staff during the preparation of the draft, that is available. Hopefully any concerns can be worked out before the draft is presented, but if not, we'll have a full discussion moving forward. And Michelle, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I hope the Water Board will continue to engage us and push, help us move forward with any funding for any studies that are necessary to delineate to the public what this would entail and what it would look like.
Yeah, we definitely support the concept of transparency as well. So thank you.
Michelle, this is Glenn McGordy, also supervisor. I really want to thank the State Water Resources Control Board for your engagement with Mendocino County. We don't always agree on everything, but I really appreciate the fact that you paid attention to us, because this has been a really difficult year for us. And I'm really glad you're here today offering suggestions and help.
Yeah, thank you. I know it has been a difficult year for you, and I hope that you guys are also, there are other funding programs that are coming out for domestic wells and state smalls, and I believe that you guys are in conversations with the Water Board on those. So just glad to hear that we can work closely together. So thank you.
Hey, excuse me, I see Matt, you have a final comment, go ahead.
Yeah, I also want to echo those words. The State Water Resource Control Board has actually been a good friend of Mendocino County for a very long time. I also wanted to point out that that there are the other sources, some of the other sources, one of them is RCAC. I'm sure Michelle knows quite a bit about that and has worked with in the past. Rural Communities Assistance Corporation. They do great work with water systems and with park districts, you name it, all the different areas, and they help out. They can do a lot of work. And the folks over at State Water Resources are a terrific resource. We've worked with them in the past on several different projects, and they've been their expertise that they're able to bring is impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
All right.
Yes, go ahead.
And with that, I guess I will leave. Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me today, commissioners.
Thank you for coming. And with that, we'll move our agenda to 7B, report on work program status and commission assignments. EO Hinman.
Thank you. This item is an informational update on outstanding commission directives and the work program. It's the result of a number of questions that have come from commissioners over the past couple of months on follow-up for some of the tasks that have been assigned. I did want to point out that in 2012, as part of a strategic planning session, the commission adopted principles and priorities that are included in attachment 1, which is page 58 of your agenda packet. So consistent with that, staff has prioritized our workload as to be the first priority, responding to public inquiries. The second priority is application processing, and the third is implementation of the work plan. The basic services budget allows for approximately 0.7 full-time equivalent employee, which is shared between the executive officer, the analyst, and the clerk. The work program is budgeted through the basic services account as well as the work plan account. This item starts on page 51 of your agenda packet. I wanted to call your attention to table 1, which is on page 52. So this is the summary of the work plan tasks. We have completed 2 of the work plan tasks for this fiscal year, which was the Covelo Community Services District and the Ukiah Valley Fire District. We are about approximately 90% complete through with CSA 3. And the City of Ukiah and the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District are in process, and we are working on the administrative drafts for those. We did present a detailed timeline and progress report on those last 2 work plan tasks at our last meeting. Also included in our work program is policy development. And over the last couple of years, the commission has directed staff to work on a couple of policy updates. The first one being the sphere of influence policy update, which was started in 2020. The Policies and Procedures Committee held several meetings and a public workshop to receive public input on the intent of the policy updates and some proposed language. There was a lot of concern from agencies who participated in the discussions, and special counsels were brought in to the discussion. And essentially the process stalled out for those reasons. And as a result, staff brought an item forward to the commission requesting further direction. As far as, so that was approximately 10 months ago. There is concern that revisiting that sphere policy update at this time would be counterproductive to the progress that is being made through discussions with the City of Ukiah and the Sanitation District staff, as well as other agencies in the Ukiah Valley and in the Willits area in particular. So in working with those staff, and we propose to allow the city and the Sanitation District staff to continue negotiating their future relationship and the provision of services in the Ukiah Valley, and allow that to play out and focus on the work plan rather than dig back into the sphere of influence policy update at this time. We did receive commission direction or commission approval for that approach, and so that's where we are with that one. The other policy is an emergency out of agency water transfer policy that was initiated last fall in response to the countywide emergency drought coordination that was occurring between the agencies within the inland areas to support the agencies on the coast in particular. There were a number of questions that were raised through that process, and essentially because the situation resolved itself somewhat when the city of Fort Bragg put in its portable desalination plant, that policy was delayed or sidelined at that point. We are entering another year of severe drought where water hauling will be a critical tool in the countywide efforts. And staff is intending to be involved, continue to be involved in the countywide drought coordination and the drought ad hoc committee efforts. I will note that Governor Newsom did issue an executive order in March of this year. And in that executive order, it appears to state that any ordinance that prohibits the hauling of water out of a water basin is suspended at this time. So that would bear looking into and would possibly affect the ability of LAFCO to address that through its own process regarding the 56-133, which is the out of agency provision of services. We were also asked to follow up on our e-signature, electronic signature policy that was adopted by the commission last year. We were requested to look into the possibility for e-signatures on checks. We have been looking into that and have been unable to find a means for that would still require the 2 signatures on our checks, that it would be consistent with our local policies. So until then, the Savings Bank of Mendocino County, where we do our checking, have our checking account, does allow for one or both signatures to be called in by the commissioners identified on the signature card held by the bank. So that is an option to help us get through until we can meet in person. We are continuing to research options for e-signatures, and we'll work with Commissioner Ward and the banks to find a solution. Under assignments, and this is moved down to page 55 of our agenda packet, we have been working on the Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Grant as a member of a team that is being led by Mendocino County and the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District. That project has been completed. The project completion date was April 30th. We submitted our final invoice on March 28th, and we will be making a report on the final project deliverables at a future meeting. The team is in the process of wrapping up the final grant project completion report. As far as the work program, we continue throughout the year to respond to public inquiries, and those range from emails or phone calls asking for general information to in-depth public records requests. We typically respond to 2 to 5 public inquiries a week, which range from about half an hour of time to several hours of staff time. We did recently complete an extensive subpoena for records related to the Mendocino City CSD district, CSD. We filled that in mid-April. Moving the other items on our work program are the processing of proposals and applications. Table 2 in this item, which is on page 56, identifies the projects that have been completed or are in process. We completed 2 applications so far this fiscal year: the annexation of the city of Ukiah into the Ukiah Valley Fire District, which was a fast-tracked application and took precedence over the work plan tasks and other applications. And out-of-agency services for water for the city of Fort Bragg. Those 2 were completed. We are currently working on the annexation of city-owned properties for the city of Ukiah and an activation of latent wastewater powers for the Elk Community Services District. Apologies for the typo in the staff report there. We also have a number of applications that are either on hold or we are working through with the agencies. One of those is the activation of latent powers for CSA 3. That application has not been submitted yet, but we are having regular coordination meetings with county staff on that process and the application needs. We are also coordinating with the city of Ukiah and Ukiah Valley Sanitation District in particular regarding potential for out-of-agency service agreements for sewer services in the Ford Road and the Masonite area. Those are under discussion at this time. No formal application has been received yet. We also have 2 pre-applications the annexation of Masonite area. We did respond to the CEQA document. So again, we spent staff time on researching the particulars of that CEQA document and providing a formal response to that as a responsible agency. And then we are coordinating with City of Ukiah staff on their future application for annexation of the Western Hills properties. So again, throughout the year, we have office operations. So we do staffing of the office 2 days a week, as well as responding to the needs for keeping the office going and commission directives. So it's a coordination of activity related to outreach and office operations, including the transition of the internet service provider. We did a new email service provider and a website update and changed phone service, and all of that also consumed staff time this fiscal year. So this is an informational report as a means to update the commission on our typical workload and commission assigned tasks. No action is requested, but we do welcome any comments or questions at this time.
Okay, I'll start. The governor's order doesn't preclude us from asking appropriate questions during the MSRs on the water agencies. Questions that now the drought has brought forward to our MSR process. That is correct?
Correct.
And Jerry, you had a comment? Go ahead. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you. Am I correct, Uma, that our work plan ad hoc committee or ad hoc work plan committee has been disbanded or eliminated? Is that true?
It has not been disbanded, no. And we did meet once at the end of last year. I think it was in December.
Okay. Well, based on your work plan, it'd be nice to maybe get the committee to help out and make some recommendations to the commission on where we're, the status of that. The second thing was on the electronic signature. I don't see where we're going to make anything work. The best solution would be to go back to our meeting together, where in the past we were signing checks after the meeting. So I don't think you need to really spend any more time on that electronic thing. If you're talking about getting together in the summertime, we can solve that problem just by signing checks after the meeting. So I would recommend forgetting that. We're not gonna find a solution with Savings Bank. I'll just continue to call in.
I will note the commission is having me, I've started signing resolutions by e-signature. So thank you for that to staff. That certainly keeps us from shuffling papers around the county. Go ahead, Glenn.
So for Uma on this CSA 3s, is that are you looking at the emergency ingress egress for brook trails in that? Is that one of the things that you're studying?
We have included that as a study area in the MSR portion of that document. We are continuing to meet with county staff regarding the proposal for that activation of latent powers specific to that pilot project in Brook Trails.
Because we're also interested in creating something similar at some point for the East Hills of Ukiah. So please keep me apprised of anything that you come up with.
Thank you. We will be bringing the CSA 3 municipal service review and sphere of influence update for public hearing with the commission at the June meeting. So, and we have included a mention of the Eastern Hills in that document.
Okay, Commissioner Frauenberger.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo Commissioner Ward's statements. We went through this very similar situation with e-signing and two signatures required in a former district that I ran. We've spent 2 years, went through 3 different banks. We could never get it quite right. So I was hoping that there might be some sort of resolution. Maybe things had changed. Maybe banking rules had differed. But it sounds like we're running into the same problems here that we ran into down there. So I would support that as well.
Thank you for that information.
Okay, any further questions, members of the public? Do you have any questions on our report from our EO Hinman today? Okay, let's see, did you ask for any direction on this?
No, this was an informational item only.
Okay, then we will move the agenda. We'll go to informational and report items, 8A. That's the presentation by the City of Ukiah on the general plan update, and I believe Craig is going to be making the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Orth. This item is an informational presentation that Craig is going to share with us. And it really ties into the work plan in that we are moving forward with the City of Ukiah and Sanitation District MSR and sphere updates. And we have been tracking parallel to the general plan update. Craig Schlatter is the Community Development Director for the City of Ukiah and has graciously agreed to share an update with us today. Craig, you should be able to share your screen if you would like to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Uma. Let's see if I can. Okay, does everyone see the presentation all right? and we'll get started here. Thank you for the introduction, Uma, and good morning to the commission and Chair Orth. It's good to see you all again. Looking forward to the day where we can see each other in person again. So maybe that's going to be this summer. I do have an informational presentation today on the 2040 general plan, and wanted to let you know that I've taken excerpts from the April 12th, 2022 presentation to the Ukiah Planning Commission and City Council. This was a joint workshop we had on the land use alternatives. And there's several slides here, but I'm going to go through them fairly quickly. I'm trying to keep to the 15-minute time slot that Uma gave me, but also provide plenty of opportunity for questions. And you can feel free to interrupt me if that makes sense. If you have a question on a particular slide, there's a lot of information here, so sometimes that makes a little bit more sense. So right now we're in alternative choices in preparing the general plan. We're in 3 and 4. We initiated the update in spring of 2019. We actually thought we'd get the update done and adopted by now or before May of 2022. But COVID really, and I'll talk about this in a second, but the impact COVID had on us is from the start with the city's general plan. And this has been really a theme of the city of Ukiah in the last few years with our long-term land use planning documents. We wanted to engage the community in a robust effort and have quite a bit of in-person interaction and input. And so we weren't really at a certain point there when we were forced to move online due to COVID. We were kind of resisting it because we had such great interaction and participation by the community in the beginning. So that's a reason for our delay on the general plan. We do expect that the general plan will be adopted by the end of this year. We're going to shoot to get that done earlier if we can, but that's our timeline right now. Ukiah2040.com is our website for the 2040 general plan, and would encourage you all to check it out if you haven't done so yet. All of the information about the general plan is contained on this website. We post updates related to documents available to be reviewed or participation opportunities, as well as you can, if you see the red button there, email list, you can sign up to be on the city's email list related to the 2040 general plan. We'll get all the updates and e-blasts that we send out about pertinent workshops. You can also make comments by clicking on the comment button there on the website. And we receive and read all of those comments. I think we received something like 110 or so at this point. I was talking about this earlier. I'm going to really briefly go through our participation process here. We had 3 workshops. We had one in September. We had 75 folks at that first workshop, lots of great interaction and good ideas. We had a second community workshop that we did during Pumpkin Fest of 2019. We had about 200 in attendance there. And one of our strategies related to community outreach is to meet the community where they are. This means that if we're providing a workshop, we try to have it in the evening or on the weekend. We have childcare services available. We have the workshop materials translated into Spanish, and we have Spanish interpreters there as well. What we're trying to get away from is the traditional planning model where you have 5 planners sitting in a room and everyone just provides their comments, and then that's the end of your public outreach. We really, especially with a general plan process or any long-term land use planning document, the more modern planning approach is to be heavily interactive with the public, and that's what we've attempted to do through our community outreach efforts. Then we had, this is what I was mentioning before, we were forced to go online. We didn't want to, but COVID forced that to happen. We had to really reimagine our entire community outreach process to make this successful. We still had 40 in attendance. I wanted 100, so obviously we didn't get where I was hoping we would get, but we did have a lot of interaction. We had some more exercises for folks to do. And these exercises, by the way, have been ongoing, still posted on the website. And that's, as I was mentioning there, we continue to do online engagement to this day, as well as putting some visioning and exercises up. Really quickly, we released existing conditions and trends workbook in 2020. This, it's about 100 pages, excellent document, shows really a snapshot in time of current conditions and trends in Ukiah, and it serves as our baseline of sorts. You know, what is going on in Ukiah right now, and then what do we expect will be the community 20 years from now? So it's a really good look at what is happening on the ground right now. I'll go through these next slides very quickly. City Council approved a general plan vision statement as well as guiding principles. And I will provide this presentation afterwards, so you can read those if you'd like. And of course, all of this information is available on our website. And that led us to the land use alternatives process. And that was the workshop that we just engaged with the Planning Commission and City Council with last month, April 12th, where they were asked to consider one of three preferred alternatives that will serve as the basis for the updated land use element, probably one of the most important elements of the city's general plan. Again, looking at big picture ideas, and I failed to mention this on the previous slide, but in preparation for the workshop, we released the Land Use Alternatives Memorandum in February. It really gets into quite a bit of detail on up to 3 potential land use alternatives to consider for the land use element, and that also is available online. We'll go into these in a little bit more detail. Alternative 1 is no change or business as usual, and this is looking at land use alternatives within the city's incorporated limits and our 3 annexation areas. So it's not looking in the city's proposed sphere of influence, which I'll talk about in a second here, but it's only looking at general plan land use designations in incorporated areas and annexation areas. So alternative 1 is there's no change. Everything stays the same. Alternative 2 is to maintain the land use designations of the existing general plan. That's the 1995 general plan, but increases the allowed densities of residential land uses. And then alternative 3 has different land use designations, a little bit more nuance in existing uses on the ground. That also increases residential densities and building intensities measured in floor area ratios or FARs compared to alternatives 1 and 2. This is a map you'll start to see more of if you haven't seen it already. Sphere of influence was the city council directed proposed sphere of influence. That's a council direction to staff. And of course, LAFCO makes the ultimate decision on what the sphere of influence will be. But in 2020, city council directed staff to pursue this proposed sphere of influence. And so that's what you see there in the orange border. The annexation areas are areas A, B, and C. I have those on the next, I think one of the next slides here to go into detail. LAFCO has seen most of these, at least pre-applications for annexation for these areas. And then, of course, the current city sphere of influence and the Ukiah Valley area plan, they're the same boundary. It's that large area, ridgetop to ridgetop. The council also directed that any areas between the proposed sphere of influence and the UVAP boundary be designated as areas of interest. So that's why you see that listed there on that map. Now, just one note on this, as we've just heard on one of the recent presentations, things are evolving very quickly in the Valley. And so we started the preparation of a land use alternatives memorandum about a year ago, and already we need to make changes to this map. Those changes are being made right now. I expect to actually have them this week. And so the proposed SOI would be expanded to include areas A and C. That's the reason there for the mapping discrepancy. Methodology related to potential build out. So these are the different areas that we looked at. I wanted to just make a note that we see a lot of potential for build out within our existing city limits, our area C, and our vacant and underutilized inventories. And I'll talk about this in a slide coming up here. But one of the biggest reasons behind the city's interest in the proposed SOI, those areas, is we want to avoid the negative consequences of sprawl. And really, I think at least the supervisors know, the city has had a really strong focus on creation of housing. We think we can do that within our existing footprint, but we want to control that sprawl. And so we see lots of opportunities within our footprint to do more infill development, increase our densities even further, potentially go higher, while still recognizing any limitations that exist within our Ukiah Municipal Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan, which was just updated in 2021 and reflects really current federal aviation standards. So we do have a little bit more flexibility with that document being adopted and going a little bit higher than we did in the past. I kept this slide in here just to, if supervisors and commissioners haven't seen this too much yet, this is really the type of housing that our community is looking for. There are changing housing needs. Not everyone is looking for a single family dwelling on a 1 acre lot anymore. And we're starting to see a need for these missing middle types of housing. Again, going back to what I said earlier, we think we can really take on more of the housing share. And Supervisor McGordy made a really good point earlier about infrastructure limitations in the county. We do not have those same infrastructure limitations in the city. And we think we could actually take on more housing, but we do want to do that in a way that retains our rural agricultural community identity. And that's really, as I mentioned earlier, behind the focus on more city control related to the proposed sphere of influence. Try to keep that sprawl from occurring. I'll go through this really quick. I think you all have seen this. The annexation areas are really the city-owned properties, the Brush Street Masonite area in Ukiah Western Hills area. City-owned is a full annexation application. Brush Street is a pre-application, and Ukiah Western Hills you haven't seen yet. But of course, the LAFCO has commented on our CEQA document earlier. Again, I'm going to go through this quickly, but I do want to just point out really these first two bullet points. Really everything the city of Ukiah has been doing in the last 2 years is related to direction received from the city council. And in particular, on January 16th, 2020, council adopted an annexation policy that stated that the city will pursue, apply for, and support the annexation of unincorporated areas to the city to avoid the negative consequences of continued urban sprawl and ensure the efficient provision of municipal services. That's really behind everything that we're doing related to our long-term planning efforts in the valley. So the next 3 slides just go into the alternatives. I'm just going to blast through these because it really just shows how the zoning is, the general plan land use designations are overlaid into the different alternatives, so you can see how that would look. But again, I'm not going to spend any time unless the commission desires that. leads us to our build out outcomes. And I see I'm right at 15 minutes, but I'm almost done. We have alternative 1 would increase the housing unit capacity by 1,692. Now, you just have to keep in mind, this is max build out. Usually you adopt these alternatives or you approve these alternatives and you don't get anywhere near the max build out. But for the purposes of our future analysis related to the CEQA side of this, we need to propose max build out. So that's what we've done here. So no change or business as usual was 1,692 housing unit and about nearly 4 million or 3.8 million of non-res. You can see the other numbers compared to alternative 1. On the April 12th meeting, both the Ukiah Planning Commission and the City Council unanimously approved land use alternative number 3. And one thing I think I forgot to mention earlier is you have to keep in mind that the land use alternative number 3 applies to the city incorporated areas and annexation areas. At this point, because the proposed sphere of influence is just proposed and it's not adopted, we can't really study the impacts of alternative 3 in that area. But we can assume that with this direction, and the council and the planning commission confirmed as much, future sphere or future annexations within, let's say, the proposed sphere is adopted, would be pursuing it under the land use alternative number 3. I just wanted to make that point. And finally, this is our timeline. As I mentioned before, we're actually on track to be done a bit earlier than this. This is allowing significant opportunities for public comments and workshops, and that's why the latter part of the schedule goes for the rest of the year. We actually have drafts of many of the elements completed or near completed. There's just a bit more work done by our general plan consultants and staff. And I did want to also mention that as part of this, right now it's looking like staff will be recommending inclusion of a brand new, really the first time in the city's history, agricultural element, really to give a nod to those ag areas in the city's proposed SOI, as well as to protect those uses and have potentially a better synergy between the city of Ukiah's land uses and those in our proposed SOI. So with that, that is the end of my presentation. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. As I mentioned, also I'll provide this presentation for distribution. Thank you.
Okay, commissioners. Let's see, I think I overexpanded. Sorry, I was muted. Glenn, go ahead.
So thank you, Craig, for the presentation. It's a great update. One of the things about our ag areas too that we have to start thinking about that we haven't thought about before is that maybe part of how we recharge the Ukiah Valley Basin groundwater, because I think flooding is going to be part of how we store water in the future. It's looking like the most cost-effective way. Building dams and such is quite expensive. And if we can actually store water in the ground, that's a really good alternative. Certainly the city of Ukiah is set up really well to retrieve it once it's been stored. And there's also some discussion of raising the level of the elevation of the Russian River channel so that it would come back up to where it used to be, which once again would have been a higher water table. So those areas that are presently floodplain are going to be very critical to the well-being of Ukiah's water supply. So as planning goes forward, we want to be sure that we're not moving into those kinds of areas, because there'll be, lost opportunity and an inherent conflict, especially if we have the kind of storms that have been happening in other parts of the United States where 7 inches falls in one night. That creates one heck of a flood here in the Ukiah Valley. So we want to be sure we don't put people in harm's way.
Thank you for those comments. Other commissioners, questions, comments? Any members of the public? I do appreciate your adding the agricultural element to the process. And I think that would probably mesh well with the efforts of the RCD and the partners in that process to look at the key agricultural lands areas that are not in great number in the county of Mendocino. So I think that's going to be important moving forward. Thank you for the website information. I would ask all commissioners to link to that. And do we have a link, Uma, to that website on our LAFCO website?
We don't, but I could add that.
Why don't we do that? If commissioners are okay with that? Okay. Any comments or questions? And certainly this shows the process and the progress it is moving forward, and we really do appreciate it here at LAFCO. Glenn, you have another comment?
Yeah, and this I know came up. Is the area of Talmadge as a potential annexed area, and I know that when Talmadge was thinking of one of the landowners of selling property for development in there, the city of Ukiah, kind of said they didn't want to provide services. So I'm just curious about the background on that.
Okay, city reps, do you want to answer that question? Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, thank you. I actually do not have any information on that particular issue. I know the proposed sphere of influence represents the area of the water districts, but I don't know beyond, I don't know anything related to the Talmadge area. Do you know something, City Manager?
Go ahead, Sage.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Commission. That particular application and the subdivision and the rezoning from ag land was actually opposite of the county's general plan. And so this, the Ukiah Valley area plan, it wasn't consistent with that. And that's what we were looking at when we made the argument, not whether or not we wanted to serve or could serve that area, but that it was simply not in line with the planning documents that were adopted by the city and the county.
I just wonder if sometime in the future, we already have kind of a little village there, if that couldn't be expanded and provided services, because it sort of makes sense for us to work with our existing communities that have some level of density and expand them. But a lot of them don't have real organized infrastructure, so it makes it difficult to do things like Redwood Valley and Talmadge.
Yeah, and just one more point on that, Talmadge is identified, I believe, as a disadvantaged community, a portion of Talmadge, the high density areas, because of the lack of infrastructure and services that are primarily available to that area, which does have more of a higher density development. Not all of Talmadge, of course, has that type of density. I know in the development of the Ukiah Valley area plan, the major concern of going east of the river was the preservation of ag and ag resources. And so that is something that would have to be, discussed in order to ensure that we continue that preservation, I believe, of ag within the Ukiah Valley, but provide the appropriate services where the community might so desire.
Craig, go ahead.
Thank you. And, I apologize, Supervisor McGorty. I think I actually I was the lead in preparing that letter. I somehow did not understand your question, but I did want to take an opportunity to also say with that letter, the other principal concern besides the planning issues were, really that development or proposed development, potential development going in contrast to the Ukiah Valley area plan. And, I want to just mention again that, the importance of this regional document. It actually is an excellent regional plan between Ukiah and Mendocino County. And a lot of what we hope to do with the ag element and the city's general plan is to reinforce a lot of the principles already within that document.
I'm glad to hear that it's not on the shelf. and that you are referring to it, because there was a lot of effort and that's exactly its purpose. So good to hear it. Other comments by commissioners? Does staff have any questions or comments to make? Uma?
Just want to thank Craig for being here and presenting today, and to I think it's important to keep the commission informed as to the efforts underway, particularly as we look at the MSR and Sphere update this year. So thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
All right. Any comments or questions from the public? Just show your hand or come unmuted. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So we will, there was no action. This was informative. So we'll move to 8B, the work plan, current and future proposals. Thank you, city staff, for being here today.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
You're more than welcome. So we're on work plan, current and future proposals. We have a written report, and Uma.
Thank you, Chair Orth. This staff report starts on page 59 of your agenda packet. We have covered most of it in other items today, so I'm just going to focus in on the active proposals. We have, excuse me, we have 5 applications on file. 2 of those are active right now. We are processing the City of Ukiah's annexation of city-owned properties and are working with city staff on that, and as well as the county auditor and assessor regarding the tax share negotiation process, which must be completed before LAFCO can continue processing the application, or complete processing the application and schedule it for hearing. The other application is the Elk Community Services District activation of latent powers for wastewater services. They are proposing to take over a community septic system from a private landholder. And so this application will be activating the latent power so that they can do that. It has been referred to the affected agencies, and a notice of filing has been sent to the county assessor and county auditor controller to initiate the tax share negotiation process on that one as well. Even though it's expected to be a zero transfer of tax, the process is still required under the code. We have 3 other applications that have had no activity: the City of Ukiah's detachment of sanitation district served areas, the City of Ukiah's pre-application for annexation of areas north of the city, and then Millview County Water District's pre-application for annexation of the Masonite properties. We still have a number of future proposals that we are working through. As mentioned before, CSA 3 activation of latent powers for the Sherwood Road pilot project, and the City of Ukiah's annexation of the Western Hills properties, which we anticipate sometime in the next few months. I think we've gone over the work plan tracking. Just mentioned that CSA 3 is scheduled for public hearing for June. So we'll bring that forward at that time. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Quickly, I'll ask a question of Commissioner Mulhern. Are you still on a tax share ad hoc committee for the supervisors?
Yes, sir. And we have a, excuse me, we have a meeting scheduled next week, May 12th or 13th. And hopefully we'll be able to bring something forward soon. We were, the cities were working together so they could have a coordinated effort with the county. So now we're at a stage where we can meet.
Good, because I know the consolidation of the offices, I'm sure they appreciate your engagement. So, and we certainly do, because as you see, so many of our activities relate to needing that tax share agreements moving forward. Commissioners, questions? Go ahead, Jerry.
Thank you. Uma, I think it's been several months now that you've received these applications for the Masonite annexation from both the city and Millview County. excuse me, Millview Water District.
Chris, I'm in a meeting.
So can we, I mean,
call you back.
obviously, only one person is going to win on this. Why can't we come to a conclusion on who's best to serve it?
Well, that is in the discussion by the city and the districts, essentially. So that is part of what is occurring in the background as we slowly work through the process of updating the MSR and the sphere of influence for the city and the sanitation district, and then ultimately the water districts in that area as well. So while there appears to be delays on the front of those studies, there is a lot of coordination going on in the background, and that is a topic of interest, specific interest to the city and the agencies. So there's a lot of discussion happening. There's a lot of, I believe they're working on coming up with a plan for service to those areas, a coordinated plan. And I anticipate that we'll be seeing that come forward in the next few months as we move through these MSR and sphere updates. They all tie together.
Glenn and Sage?
So one of the things that's developing is that with the drought emergency orders is that the groundwater sustainability agencies are kind of being empowered for permitting of wells. And I don't know if that's risen on your radar screen yet or not, but how that's going to play out, we're not really sure. But obviously, pumping out of the aquifer, if there's any change in water use by any of these companies, is an issue that is going to involve both environmental health and the Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency. I don't even know what our policy is going to be yet. It's so new that it really hasn't been discussed. Ultimately, the groundwater sustainability agencies will play a role, though, in any pumping that takes place in the Ukiah Valley.
Question for you, Glenn, real quick before Sage. Have you considered the county in developing the water agency and developing any commercial wells in the outlying areas where there's domestic water issues for health and safety provision? Is that something that's been talked about at all?
Yes. So we have a county ad hoc on wells and commercial water hauling, and we're trying to decide what to do about that as well, because again, Ukiah Valley Basin is pretty well defined, but we don't really know what's going on in like the Laytonville, Brown Valley, Little Lake Valley. We're not really quite sure what is happening there. So we're concerned. We've applied for grants from the State Water Resources Control Board to actually get a little better definition. But yeah, it's certainly on our radar screen because we don't want to be having a lot of pumping going on and then having people's wells go dry. Plus, there's also water quality issues in those basins because there is a background level of arsenic that is of concern. So the county is very much aware and trying to figure out what if anything, we can do to make sure if we have a sustainable water supply in those places.
Thank you, Glenn. Sage?
Yeah, thank you. Just to add on to Uma's comments in relation to Commissioner Ward's questions about the applications in the Masonite Brush Street Triangle area, and that part of what you heard today from the Water Control Board and the step that LAFCO took forward in supporting efforts for consolidation is part of the overall discussion that I think Uma was referring to in those discussions that are taking place. These discussions are significant. The step and the leadership effort that LAFCO took this morning in directing, continued support of those efforts is certainly appreciated. And I would expect that we would probably see, as these efforts move forward, that we would see some evolution or modifications to those applications related to the Masonite and Brush Street Triangle area. That would be my hope as we proceed with efforts and the discussions related to consolidation, that there wouldn't be a decision selecting between agencies and servicing in these areas, but that there would be a coordinated effort to deliver a full plan to LAFCO that has all that in consideration without the fight between municipalities and water districts and so forth. So that's the current effort that we're trying to make at this time. So we do recognize that there is some level of delay with those applications, but that delay is being replaced by collaboration and effort to see a hopefully a better solution and outcome forward.
Thank you for that information. Further questions or comments on this item? Go ahead, Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Sage, for that those comments. I think the crux of the matter is the well at Masonite, correct? Who's going to control the well? Is that what really boils down to?
I don't think so. No, I really don't. I mean, it's really the efforts for collaboration and cooperation that we're currently having isn't about control of resources, but about the best provision of resources for the entire Ukiah Valley. So, that's, I don't think that's not an issue for the city. It wasn't an issue for the city in our original application. So I don't think that that's the case.
Okay, well, good luck on the consolidation or discussions and consolidation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Funkberger, did you still have a comment or question?
No, actually, Sage hit on it pretty well. And I was gonna echo basically exactly what he said, that wasn't really a water fight going on there. The two were put in for basically disparate reasons, but overlapping at the same time. So, anyways.
Thank you. Certainly glad to see these discussions ongoing, and I think the whole commission is very pleased to see the discussions ongoing. So thank you to staff of all the agencies involved. Any further questions? Let's see, we're moving to correspondence, 8C. Uma?
No correspondence to note.
Then we'll move directly to the CALAFCO Business and Legislative Report.
Thank you. There is a legislative report that starts on page 64 of your agenda packet. I won't go into it unless there's any questions. I can follow up on that. I think one thing to note is that SB 938, which revises the protest provisions for LAFCO initiated dissolutions to align with standard protest provisions, did pass out of the Senate floor. So the support letters that were approved last month and submitted were greatly appreciated. It's now headed for the Assembly. So this bill is still moving forward and is still alive. The other thing to report out of CALAFCO is that they are, a number of years ago, there was a proposal by San Diego LAFCO that we discussed in one of our meetings to revise the provisions for 56133 regarding out of area service agreements. That one is starting to be worked through the legislative committee for CALAFCO, and they are in the process of collecting information regarding out of area services that are being provided without LAFCO authorization. So we'll be working with them to provide information to that, as is all the other LAFCOs. So I think that's all I have for the CALAFCO business report or matters.
Uma, do be aware that you might need a outboard microphone because you are cutting in and out, or just the level is varying dramatically. We're hearing, I'm at least hearing everything you're saying, but it varies in loudness to soft-spoken quite a bit.
Okay, thank you.
And I do appreciate the CALAFCO report. There's certainly a lot going at the state level to be aware of. Let's see, any questions? And we'll go on to Uma's executive officer report.
Thank you. So as we reported last month, alternate Special District Commissioner Bazzani did resign. So we have initiated the solicitation process for nominations for both the alternate Special District seat as well as the regular Special District seat. As a reminder, Commissioner Fromberger's term is up at the end of this calendar year, excuse me. So we have done the nomination packet to address both. So the deadline for nominations is August 1st, and then we'll do the election process after that. We've also, as noted earlier, completed our response to the subpoena for public records request related to the Mendocino City CSD. Also, as reported, the board chambers will not be open to other agencies until at least this summer, and I want to thank Commissioner Mulhern for helping to coordinate with me on that. We have 2 public hearings scheduled for June 6th. We have CSA 3 Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence update, and we also have the final budget for next fiscal year. And I think that's all I have to report for this month.
Any questions on the report? Are there any committee reports?
We have no committee meetings.
And thereby commissioner reports, comments, or questions? Just raise your hand. It's been a long meeting, so thank you for all of your patience today. I think we got quite a bit done. As LAFCO seems to be moving forward in time, I certainly appreciate all your efforts at helping us do so. And with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. To our next meeting will be on June 6th.
I'll make that motion.
Doesn't require a second or a vote. So thank you to all of you for coming, and to staff, thank you, and all the public participation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.